Tokozani, hello, hey Sean, Sierra, how are you? Liza, is it Gabe, Martinisho, Gab, Ziva, B, Yannick, how's everyone? Busi, Ninjani, Tokozani, Bantwana Betongo, Tokozani, Hotep Royals. How is everyone doing? Tap, 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 tap that screen. It's tap, 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 tap so we can have a conversation. How's everyone doing? It's been a while. Togoza, Busi, Togoza. Joy, Mhlungu. How's everyone doing? Nice to see you all. South Africa, why aren't you sleeping? South Africa, tell me. Talk to Gogo, talk to Mkulu. What have happening with this election, South Africa? Awa. South Africa, yini mara. South Africa, you are giving all of us heart attack. Huh? Yo, no, South Africa. South Africa, you're Africa's hope. Do you realize your spiritual role in the world, South Africa? Do you understand why every single person from the African continent is represented in South Africa right now? I think you all need to understand that so you understand your importance. You are vital. You are a critical component. Hi, South Africa, ngeke. Who are all these people I'm seeing beozing and having a good time with DA? South Africa! Hi, Bo. We are trying to decolonize. South Africa, you are trying to recolonize. How, South Africa, you hurt us. South Africa, you have hurt us. You don't understand. Togozani, nice to have you guys. Please keep tapping. Let's have more people on and then I will launch into our topic. But man, South Africa, you guys, Mara. I saw people dancing to Vulindlela with some palm-colored creatures. South Africa, what are you doing? I can understand not wanting the cupcake. Okay, we are all here with cupcake. But you see, cupcake is in cahoots with the palm-colored ones. So I'm like, okay, aside from cupcake, Mara, we have the Julius, and then we have Ubab Zoom Zoom. You could not pick one of those, South Africa. Huh? Yo, South Africa, you have hated us. It was very butlungu. You don't it's still very butlungu. But man. We're all sitting. Like, if you guys aren't sleeping, I get it. We are also here. We are not sleeping. You understand what I'm saying? Because we are watching this thing unfold. And now it's been said that, all the other parties have said, listen, we want a do-over, not recount, do-over. I'm like, Mara, we've been telling you, you do not take a country through the ballot. You take a country through line formation. Gijima. That is how you take a country. That is how you take a country. You're not going to negotiate your land back. It's not possible because you're dealing with creatures that are inherently greedy. You're dealing with creatures that balkanized the whole country, and it is a corporation that is being traded on the stock exchange right here in New York. If you don't believe me, Google SCE, South Africa Corporation, and you will see. You want me to tell you who the signatories or shareholders, major shareholders on that thing are? Are you listening to me? Cyril, Rupert, Oppenheimer, Juju Malema. To mention just a few. Those are the major shareholders in the country/corporation called South Africa. Guys in? Sizenkingen. We are, this is why, ultimately, if Bakwantu in South Africa are to get total freedom, It will have to be by the pew pew. It will have to be you all saying enough is enough, getting up and going and occupying the same way they did in Zimbabwe. It's not going to come any other way because it's a corporation being traded on the stock exchange. There are people who are making money, who purport to be your leaders, but they're literally making money on this corporation called South Africa. Everybody who works in South Africa right now, you are on a plantation. Don't be under any illusion that you have any kind of freedom, because how are you free if your country is a corporation? Your country is a government. What needs to happen? Sana, it's starting to be apparent. Yes, it's there. The documents are there. Ndlovukazi, the documents are there. I will never come here and lie to you. What for? The documents are there. And the signatories, I've told you, the major shareholders in this corporation: Cupcake, Rupert, Oppenheimer, there's some other, wait, this company is also being traded on the Swedish, the German, those are the two I saw, stock exchanges as well. So Germans are shareholders in a corporation called South Africa. Swedes are shareholders. I'm talking the governments of, not individual Swedes, not individual Germans. I'm talking about the governments of those. Guys, in. Anyway, listen, this one, and the thing is, what you all don't understand is, look at Africa's reaction in the diaspora and on the continent. We are in full support. Hell, some of us are coming home soon. If I come home and there's a toy and going, you bet I'm there, because I understand very deeply the importance of South Africa to the true liberation of Bakwantu. And that is why I keep saying, don't be fooled. If you look at it spiritually, you will see that there's not a single African country that isn't represented in South Africa, especially in Gauteng. Not a single. North, south, east, and west, there is. Every country is represented. Remember what I've told you about Northern Kemet. Northern Kemet was where? Northern Kemet was where everybody from the south, central, east, west moved. Right? That is where they used to go to conference and share and exchange information. That energy that was in Northern Kemet those thousands of years ago, when Africans used to go there to share knowledge. This is where Medu Nature came from. The first writing is not Medu Nature. The first writing are the cave paintings that you see all over the continent, Southern Africa, everywhere. That is, if you look at Medu Nature, the classical language of Africa, the classic language of Kemet. It wasn't just for Northern Kemet. This was the classical language that united all of Africa. So that energy that used to make people go to the north where everything was refined, that energy is now down where we are. That is why people find themselves gravitating towards South Africa. Let me tell you, it looks like it's an economic migration of people to Africa because we're not awake. We're not awake. It is deeper than just an economic migration. It is because this is now the spiritual center where Africans will come together and learn and start to learn unity and collaboration and move back to their spaces to pass on that knowledge. Am I making sense? Masithokozeni to those who've just come on. So, although I must say I'm shaken by the results of this that's happening, but I also have the spiritual insight to see that this is not the end. This is actually just the beginning. Because now what's going to happen is people's backs are going to be pushed against the wall. And once that happens, I say impi. We can smell it. Impi sesangweni. It's right there by the gate. It's almost, we're almost there. So keep watching, keep listening, and don't say I didn't tell you so. It's going to have to happen that way. Because once that happens, it means these bilateral agreements, this cooperation, and that constitution which buttresses this cooperation is going to have to be torn apart, because it will all be made obsolete, null and void once that happens. And that's the only way this thing will be made null and void. You can't take that constitution and try to panel beat it, because it is the basis of the corporation called South Africa. Right? So in order for that whole mess to be dissolved, so that people can get their land back properly and get what is their heritage, it's going to need to be forced to crumble, broken down, torn apart. And then people can really be free. And then people can have autonomy over their own resources and over their own lives. So, masiphahleni, guys. Umphatlo wesizwe is very important. You know, join the great empire of Kemet so that we phahlela this thing into the ground. Right? We are not those who carry ibam. We don't have the pew-pews, right? We don't. But I tell you something, we have umoy. And we understand that our ancestors, centuries old, are alive and they are well. And this is at the time. They are awake. They are ready. So for those, please. It's not SCO, it's SCE. SCE. Or just Google the South Africa Corporation. There's one report that's from Snope that says this is false. Of course, they're going to say it's false. But SCE.gov, that is the United States Stock Exchange, something. Stocks, something, here, SCE.gov. You'll find it. Yeah. Look it up. And you can, if you look it up and find it, come and tell everybody here what you have found. But anyway, now that we're a nice crowd, the topic I really wanted us to talk about is the issue of toxic cultural and social conditioning as pertains to Bagwantu. For starters, when we talk, let's take it first from the social. When we talk of social conditioning, we're talking about something that happens to you based on the society in which you were born. In other words, when you are born knowing what you came here to do. However, we go through what we might even call the sea of forgetting, whereby by the time you come to real consciousness, when you're about 2, 3, 4, you kind of remember, you even remember where you came from. And you'll often hear babies talk about how, I was somewhere and I was playing with my little friend and then I saw my mommy and then I wanted to come and then I decided that she was going to be my mommy. I mean, very often you'll hear kids talking like that. They're not talking about some imaginary friend. Most of the time they're really talking about something that they experienced when they were still spirit, not yet incarnated into a physical body. So most or many of us don't remember what contracts we signed, what agreements we made as spirit before incarnating. But I'll tell you, you chose to be here at this time. You chose to be within the family that you are. You chose them as what is called your soul group, to incarnate into that family. So why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this so that you understand that as somebody who was born with a mandate, you lose sight of that mandate because of social conditioning. Social conditioning starts in the home, right? Depending on the family you're born into, what is their socioeconomic status? That will influence you, right? What are their social relationships? That will influence you. What is the neighborhood into which you were born? That will influence you too as you grow up, because it impacts how you are raised, right? Then the next level after that is, what school did you go to? Now, this is where the real social conditioning starts. The minute you start leaving your parents' home, you could be born into a family where the shared values between mother and father, or the shared values with ogogo, nabo mama and aunties, is such that you are being raised in an okay space, right? Where you are taught certain values and you are brought up as a child within that home. But the minute you step out and they start putting you in school, bear in mind, if you look, as the years have gone by, when I was going to school, the age at which you were accepted in school was 7 years old. So your formative years were at home. Many people couldn't afford creche, and it was for the elite, basically. And in many black communities, creche didn't exist for us in the townships or in the rural areas. So your first 7 years were spent at home. What were the things you were learning at home? You were learning about family structure. You were learning about gender roles, which we're going to start talking about, the cultural aspect, because the gender roles thing really, it bridges both cultural and social, right? So here you are, you're in this home up until 7. Then 7, you are shipped off to school. Some people were shipped off to boarding school in my era. Imagine the trauma of being uprooted from your family as a little 7-year-old and being thrown to the wolves in boarding school. Your parents take you there with your big trunk with your name on it and all your goodies, and they wave goodbye and they leave you there for 3 whole months. You're 7. Now you need to swim with the sharks, the bullies. You see others who look like you and they're also in the same boat as you. You're all crying. You're these little 7-year-olds. Now where you were at home, where maybe you weren't being made to make your bed at 7, you're being woken up. It's like military style. You wake up in the morning, you make your bed, you go and you wash, you put on your uniform, put on your socks, and you go to school. In some boarding schools, by that stage already, you're needing to take care of your own clothes. You're learning to make sure your uniform is clean. If it's not, you got the cane. You now need to learn to cover your own books. How many of you guys remember the exercise book that you have to cover in brown paper? Cover, and then and if anything happens to you, there's no mom or dad or gogo to cry to. Remember, back then there were no cell phones. Right? Back then, many homes didn't have a phone in the house. So when they put you in school for 3 months, you were gone, out of sight for 3 months. Anything that happened to you got taken care of there. So that's the boarding school. Say you're a day scholar, same thing. You're out of the house most of that day. So your grandparents, your parents, your community no longer has any control in what you are learning, because now you are in the system. This is where the real social conditioning, this is where now your mind gets bent out of shape. Number one, with the education they're feeding you, the manner in which you are being taught. Remember, I've said to you before that Bagwantu, we learn symbolically, we learn with pictures. Why? Because we are not straight line people. We are a people of frequency, which comes down in a spiral or in a wave. How many people really had a hard time understanding things in school? For some, it seemed simpler, but for some, it's like your mind just couldn't grasp something. It's not your fault, and it's not because udom. It is simply because by nature we learn in symbols and in pictures. All these symbols are our symbols. All of them. I know they scare a lot of people. They're like, oh, the Illuminati. Well, that's because they've been taken over and used for evil, along with other things. But I digress, right? We learned in symbols and pictures. We learned to draw. That was how we learned. We are the first mathematicians, but we didn't write 1 plus 1 equals 2. That is white man. If I wanted to count 5 cows, then I would take 5 sticks or 5 items and put them together and have them represent 1 cow, 2 cow, 3. Sounds simple, but it was done because from there we then did multiples of 5, multiples of 10. Do you understand what I'm saying? So many of us struggled through school and that whole social conditioning thing because of the method of teaching, which is very palm colored. It didn't cater to us. Remember, education was not created for us. How do we know this? That's why there was Bantu education. You were supposed to be educated just enough to be able to serve Bas, just enough to be able to cook nice food, just enough so that you would be able to do the garden, just enough so you could be able to write your name so you could get a pass. This was the continent over. I'm using South Africa because I'm familiar with that, and Zimbabwe as well, right? Now, here is where it gets tricky. You're going to school and you are being fed all this stuff. But when you go home, the way you're being socialized at school is not the way you're being socialized at home. What happens there? Cognitive dissonance. What happens after that? Trauma. Because your little brain, your little mind is so malleable and plastic and prone to confusion and conflict, which causes anxiety. How many of you were bedwetters until you were 9 or 10 years old and used to get whipped for bedwetting? Why? Because our parents didn't understand that we were so being traumatized that bedwetting is it's a big sign of trauma in young kids, especially kids who are potty trained. We didn't have the words to articulate what we were going through. So we just went through it. And most times it was trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma. Fast forward now, you get to puberty. You've somehow adjusted to this whole school thing. It's uncomfortable, right? You're walking around feeling like you're wearing shoes that don't really fit. That's what school felt like to all of us, to our souls, to our spirit. You went to this thing, but somehow, somewhere, you always felt like you were wearing an ill-fitting jacket because it was. But you learn to live with the pain of shoes that hurt, right? After a while, you register the pain, but, your foot has become numb. Or this jacket, you register that it's uncomfortable, it doesn't fit, but, you've gotten used to it. That is all that was. Fast forward now, you're a teenager, the dating starts and the what starts. And now we have a clash again right there because depending on where you grew up, depending on your home, premarital sex is a no-no. Now you're having all these feelings and stuff and going on, but you don't really have anyone you can talk to about such things because such things aren't talked about. Why? Religion. You're just told fornication, no fornication. You fornicate is a mortal sin. You are going to hell. In fact, you are taught these feelings that you have when you are going to hell. You are a sinner for having those feelings. They're in my body, right? Like I don't have control. You are a sinner for having those feelings. What does that do to a young mind? Right? Now there's a clash. You've got this Western knowledge of love that you who grew up watching Dallas and Dynasty. What was the other one? Dallas, Dynasty. Well, all these rubbish things that we used to watch when we were young. Maybe some of you are too young. I'm dating myself, huh? I'm telling you my age. And you're watching this model of love, this romance. You all know where romance comes from? Rome. What has Rome got to do with you? What are you busy going romancing? That's why you all take part in Valentine and all this kind of nonsense. That has nothing to do with you. That's why it never sits well. And that's why for all the Valentines you've celebrated, your relationship's still falling apart. Why? Because there isn't a solid social and cultural foundation. Because of all the toxicity that we've imbibed. Right? So there you are. You are watching this thing you're seeing on TV. You are watching, that's the model. You look at the model in your home and maybe it's not so great, you know. Your dad doesn't kiss your mom. Maybe they don't even talk to each other. Yeah. Maybe your dad is a tyrant who comes home from work. Remember, he's working for Vas. And Vas's kid calls him John. And he comes home and he's bruised, ego-wise. And he walks in the door and y'all get it. Your mom gets it. So you've got this model of love here with this romance from Rome. And then you have this that's going on with your parents, which is toxic in of itself. Where does that leave you? In terms of learning about relationships, where does that leave you? You have a choice. You look at that one and you tell yourself, I will never want that. You look at this one with these Oyibo people, these ones, abakama inwele ngeminwe, going, oh my God. And that looks more attractive to you, right? Illusion. What you're experiencing in your home is a reality, but it's not a good reality. It's a sad reality, but at least it's real. That other thing is a total illusion. So now we are going along. You know, we're like cripples. We are going, trying to create relationship, trying to create families. Man, but we have these big old ankle weights that are pulling us backwards and that are pulling us down. Right? So this is a very complex topic. And I'm ad-libbing here because I'm just allowing Spirit to lead me where Spirit will. We're not even done with exhausting that whole aspect. But I want us to look at toxic cultural traits. And I call them toxic because a lot of what we call culture right now is not African culture. Please hear me well. If you are looking at African culture post-colonization, it is distorted. Why do I say that? Because it's facts. African culture across the continent after colonization is distorted. Like, for example, these rigid gender roles. Let's look at this whole cultural thing from within the home, right? Guys, please tap the screen. Tap. Let's see if we can get more people to join. And then I'll open it up for questions and chit chat. But I wanted to just kind of lay the foundation and then people can ask me questions and we can interact, right? Let's start in the home. I'm going to take, say, what we might call an ideal family. There's a mother and a father. Let's say that in this home there is a boy and a girl. Right? As the little girl is growing up, let's start there. What kinds of toys is she getting in that home? She's getting baby dolls. She's getting the prams, the buggies, to push the baby doll. Hell, nowadays you can even get a little shopping cart so that when mommy goes shopping, you've got your own little cart and you're putting your things in. What else is happening with this baby girl? She's getting all the pink stuff. She's getting it's considered funny when she dresses up in her mother's dresses and she tries her mother's high heels and falls off of them. What happens when she gets to the age of about 10, 11? She's taught how to serve. Mom cooks and says, take your brother his plate. Or take your dad his plate. Or come and help mommy set the table. What happens to the little boy during this time? The little boy gets toy pew pew pews and monster trucks. I might shoot you. I'm sorry. Right? He's watching his mother serve his father. And he's watching his mother train his sister to serve him and to serve his father. Already there, do you see what has happened? He has already in his mind understood that women are there to serve men and boys. The little girl, it's already ingrained in her. She's being groomed, toxically so. She's being groomed to be a mother and a wife from that very age. So as she grows up, her whole identity and idea of who she is not who she is at her core, is not who her soul is. Because remember, her soul has not found any free expression here because she's being modeled. She's forgotten her soul's purpose, and no one in her environment is assisting her to remember. She is being brainwashed, and she's literally being molded into what society and her culture want her to be. Here's the other part. When the little girl falls and she cuts herself and she starts crying, what happens? Oh, Askis Nana, come here. She's petted. She's given the comfort. Let me kiss the boo-boo. This dad too. Let me kiss the boo-boo. So she grows up knowing that I can cry. And crying gets me comfort. And crying gets me hugs. The little boy sees this. He tries it. He cuts himself. Or he falls. What happens to him? Hey, stop. Wipe those tears. Boys don't cry. Right? Men don't cry. This is a 5-year-old. See, at that age, the only difference between these two is that one has a little bit more testosterone that started kicking in at 6 weeks in utero to form the pee-pee and those the little girl, her hormones haven't kicked in. Remember that at 6 weeks, 2 embryos, male and female, are exactly identical. Post 6 weeks, if it's XY, if it's a male embryo, testosterone starts pumping, and this then causes the sexual organs to develop into male. But at the very beginning, at their core, they are the same. So these 5-year-olds are still the same except for the external that we're seeing right there that hasn't even been activated yet, but they're now receiving different treatment. One is being comforted because she's a girl. The other doesn't receive this comfort for the same behavior, but gets admonished for expressing emotions that are commensurate with getting hurt. When a child gets hurt, they cry. But he's being told that men don't cry. Already we are burdening him with manhood when he's 5. Already we're teaching him that this gender of his doesn't cry because society and culture says no. It means you are weak. They learn very quickly, these little boys. By the time they reach about 9 or 10, a lot of them don't cry. They learn to repress their emotions that are labeled as signs of weakness. The only emotions that they will allow to surface are anger and aggression because yibudoda. Society associates aggression and anger and competitiveness, toxic competitiveness with masculinity. We've already laid that down. This little girl, somebody might bully her, and she rises up to fight for herself and to protect herself. She now gets admonished for displaying emotions commensurate with the situation she finds herself in, and she's admonished and she's told, you are not being ladylike, you're not being nice, you're not being kind. So do you see, when I talk about toxic cultural and social conditioning, it really starts there. Guys, please share this out. Somebody said I must encourage people to share. When I come here, I expect you all to be ready. I just come here when Spirit says come and talk. So a lot of the times I'm not even watching numbers. I am, like you can tell, I'm just in it. Somebody just said to me, Liz, just share this out so people can come. This is very important. Guys, I'm going to repost this thing on YouTube, by the way. So if you want to rewatch it, if this stuff is resonating with you guys, show me some love, because then I know that, I'm hitting where Spirit says I must hit, because this was an instruction. I'm actually terribly busy, but on instruction, I will oblige. I come. I come bearing gifts. So, family, I want us to look at these things, because we tend to take a surface level assessment or view of the way society or our people are today without really delving deep and introspecting as to how we got here. So I just talked about these things as though in isolation, right? We've got the social, we've got the cultural. And I've said to you before, and I'm going to say it again, this cultural piece is not accurate. It's a distorted culture which got distorted once the palm-colored creatures were allowed to be in our midst. And in some places they forced themselves in, but we have to take accountability. We had others who let them in. Would we have been fighting them for centuries? Well, we had been fighting them for centuries and warding them off. The Greeks and then the Romans ended up in Kemet. Even the Arabs ended up in Kemet. After centuries of being fought away, they were, until, unfortunately, we had the sellouts. Why I'm saying this, I want you to understand, and we've got to be real and honest when we tell our stories, so that we're really teaching. Why? Because I do believe we're in this age now of truth telling. And I do believe the truth telling is not just for the sake of truth itself, but how is this truth going to liberate us and help us to move forward? Truth telling, anybody can just tell the truth. It's all there now. It's always been there, hidden in plain sight. We just weren't looking for it. We look for it now, not because our situation as Bagwantu is better, but because umoya, the prevailing energy, is what is propelling us and pushing us to look. Otherwise, it's been there. They didn't really hide much. They whitewashed here and there, but if you were looking, you would have found it. We weren't. Because we're in survival mode, right? When you're in survival mode, you really don't look left or right. You face your issues on a day-to-day. And as a collective, that is what we've been in for centuries, in survival mode. So back to the toxic cultural and social traits. A lot of you know, I've told this story before, and many of you know. We know that colonization and apartheid did a number. It was done deliberately. Number one, let's look at the family structure and what happened to us. When the colonials came and they colonized, one of the first things that they did, of course, was to take and remove people off their ancestral lands and put them on land that was less fertile. They took over people's ancestral lands, sometimes taking over their livestock. thereby impoverishing these people. They put them on land that was not agriculturally good on purpose. Sometimes they put them on mountain slopes. Sometimes they put them in hot, hot valleys, in drought-stricken areas on purpose. Why? Because then these people would be forced to go to look for employment either on their very own ancestral lands and get paid peanuts. Because remember, these motherfuckers were lazy. These motherfuckers were lazy and they're weak. Right? They're weak. Then what they did is they set up cities and created factories. Also making sure that Bagwantu were forced, because remember they were starving on this land where you can't grow anything. They've taken your livestock from you. You have nothing. You have two choices. You either go and work on a farm or you go to the cities to work so you can make money for your family. What did they do in the cities? First, they created hostels, ama-hostel. Then they created the townships, where Nkulunsingiza calls them concentration camps, because they really are. You go as somebody who was used to rolling hills, fertile land, clean air, fresh food, fresh fruit, to being put in a space where you are on top of each other like sardines. You can't move. You guys know the Lokshi houses and what they're like, right? This is where people were crammed into. Mostly it was men. Why? Because they're the ones who were going to work the factories. The women and the kids were left at home. Think about the state of your psyche being forced. First, you got to deal with the fact that your land has been taken from you. Remember, these people are not kind people. They're not nice people. They are brutes who are telling you on a daily how inferior you are, how unintelligent you are, how you are ugly, how you are useless. They are dehumanizing you at every turn. Then they throw you into this concentration camp. You see your brother. What happens? Ulaga. Because you're already hurt and traumatized and angry. Now you've got a whole bunch of you in there. Then let's just add the cherry on the cake. Right there in your township, they provide a beer hall or they provide somewhere where you can all gather. I know in Zimbabwe they used to call them, I'm a beer hall. There were plenty. In every location there was a central beer hall where they supplied alcohol, especially Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to keep you all dum-dum, or so that you fight amongst yourself. Oh, Gwazwana, people would be stabbing, shoot every weekend. You just knew this is what they did. So now they've put you in a chaotic state of mind. And you're in there and you're a bunch of men. Then, wherever you have a bunch of men, there is a trade. They call it the oldest trade in the world that will start to happen. Because remember, in the villages, mothers and daughters and so were left behind with nothing. You here in the city, you might be a good man. My God, these men loved their families, most of them. They came to work for their families and to take money back. But that trip back was arduous. So you go home once, you go home twice. In the end, you're going home maybe Christmas. Maybe that Christmas you don't go because you want to pick up overtime. Now we've created a nice fertile ground for the women out there to say, never. Your father has not been home. It's 1.5 years. He has not been sending money. I'm going to Goli, I'm going to wherever, I'm going Gwablawayo, I'm going to Salisbury, I'm going to find him. She goes there, and what does she find? Lo and behold, there are other sisters from the villages who came and then decided, you know what? these suckers have money. We are going to do a fair exchange, right? You give me money, I give you what I give you, and it's all lovey-dovey. Some men then took certain women in and started living with them and forgot about the family at home. Now, I'm not here to make a judgment at all on the men who forgot the family at home. Remember, I've painted the picture. Think of what's happening in here. Think of the trauma. Think of the anger. Think of the humiliation and the hurt. Put yourself in that position for a minute and ask yourself, what would I have done? If I found a warm body just for one night, just to forget my problems, would you not have done the same? Would you not have done the same? There are people who are doing that for less. Imagine that stress. Then now your wife used to cook for you, your wife used to iron, your wife used to, when you come home, make sure, hey, now there's no more. But there's this one here who's offering herself. Before you know it, Fat and Set. The beginning of the famous Fat and Set. Fat and Set. Fat and Set started in the cities, guys. In the rural areas, it was a taboo. In some rural areas now, I know it's still a taboo. It just does not happen. That you just go and you stay with a man, or you take somebody's child and you live with them. It doesn't happen. Fat and Set, it started with this colonial nonsense, and it started in the cities, in the townships, at the mines, those mining compounds. Imagine you're going under the ground, you are beating with a pickaxe. You are beating on rock until the vibrations moor your body. If you don't collapse and die there, you might be killed by one of those cages coming down, and all of you just perish, because imagine the force when it hits rock. You have all this going on in your mind as you are in that mine. And when you are done working in that dusty place and you've inhaled asbestos and you have asthma and all this, you come to the ground and there's a tavern. Don't judge, because if you put yourself in that person's shoe, would you not have run to the tavern as the first thing you do? And would you not sit there, tell yourself you're having one, until you say, you know what, this blood money, I F it, I'm drinking it all. I suffered for this money. And you sit there and you are wasted until the next shift. I want you to understand, and I'm painting this picture for you because I want you, Bagwantu, to get into your heart space. I want you to start to feel for our forefathers and our foremothers. Why? Because this is what will connect us to them when we pasha and you tell them, I know, because you took yourself through this. It's not easy, but I want you to feel and to understand why we have no excuse not to fight for what's ours. I need you to understand that we have no excuse not to heal. You have to get it inside you that we have to heal so that they can heal. Because now you're sitting here, you're listening to me. I don't know where you are. I don't know your circumstances. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what you're going to go through. I don't know what your traumas are. But as you are watching me right now, you have an opportunity to heal that they didn't have. Because they had the colonizer boot right here. They had no time to think, what is my soul's purpose? They had no time to think, really, should I deal with my childhood wound or not? There was no such, there was no time, there was no space. You, if you're here watching me, you have the time, you have the space, you have the opportunity. It's on you. It's on you. When we heal ourselves, when we come to understand who we are, we would not allow this crazy politicking that's going around to carry on for much longer. I'm telling you these stories so that you understand that our ancestors did the best they could under the circumstances with the colonizer's boot on their neck. That is why today, you and me, we're still here. We are here today. What is destroying us now is not the colonizer boot on the neck, it's the colonizer's chains in the mind. You might say, which is better? I say, it's all evil, but at least for Tina, we can work on this. We can decolonize this and come into alignment with who we are and go get what's ours. They fought, those people. There were riots in the townships. There were riots at the mines where they went on strike, refused to work. Do you know what would happen to them? The dogs, the canine units would be brought in. The water hoses would be brought in. And they would be mowed down mercilessly. What do we have to fear? To just open your mouth and speak? To join others if you see them outside marching? What do we have to fear? What are our constraints? What is our excuse? Because anything we have right now is an excuse. It's not a reason. They had reasons, but they still fought. They were fighting for us. They were fighting for their families. They were fighting for their land. The best way they knew how. Under the circumstances, they did the best they could. Are we doing the best that we can right now? Will our children one day turn around and say, yeah, but those people fought? Or will they turn around and say, that's how they let us down? Will we be heroes and heroines to our children that they look up to and say, you know what, we're picking this up where our parents left off? Or will our children be hanging their heads in shame, think, look at the nonsense, because they were lazy, because they were self-absorbed, because they were mentally colonized and didn't want to do anything about it. Look at the mess they've left us in. Because I'm telling you, whether we do this work or not, somebody's going to have to do it. Africa is not going to stay like this forever. The question is, are we ready to take up our responsibility and do our part so that even when we do kotama and go down, our children behind us come and take where we left off and move on? Or are we going to be boto, dom, and sit there like this, just waiting to be killed, as Mkulu would say, by sugar diabetes or high? What a way to die. What a disgraceful way to die. We're all going to go. Wouldn't you rather go with your hand on the neck of some colonizer going, and he stabs you, but you'll be known that she died fighting. She didn't die of sugar and overeating. She died fighting. That's what I want my epitaph to say. She died fighting. She died fighting. Our ancestors survived violent changes in their societal and their cultural structures and norms and ways of being and existing. It was a violently removed. It wasn't some evolutionary thing. I often hear people saying, oh, but culture is evolves. Culture is flexible. It evolves. Our ancestors' culture did not evolve. It was, the cultural shift was swift, was brutal. It was foisted on them through the use of a book. Many of whom were tortured until the prefrontal cortex was damaged so that they no more had any cognitive abilities, no more critical thinking powers. They were asked, do you believe in Jesus Christ? And they were used. Because of torture methods that were used. And then you you voluntarily go. You voluntarily go and go deeper, Papa. Yes, Jesus. Jesus. There are people who died brain damaged from torture because they refused to say that name. They refused to say that name. And you have a choice, but you choose not to. That's on you. That's on you. My thing is, are you able to look at yourself and your track record in the collective of Bakwantu and genuinely say, I'm doing my part to uplift the collective. I'm doing my part to my part. No one is saying shift the whole paradigm, because the paradigm shift comes when every single person within the community does their part. No one person can shift any paradigm. No one person can change culture or society. This happens when enough people within a collective see and feel a need for change and then start doing the things that need to be done to change. And it starts with you. Are you doing your healing? I'm always talking. I'm a healer. It starts with you. Are you doing your healing? Like I said, your ancestors didn't have that opportunity. They were too busy trying to survive the Boers and the British and the Germans and the French. Who are you trying to survive? Or you are running, not to survive anything, but you're running from self most of the time, aren't you? They ran to alcohol because the stress, the pressure, the trauma was too much, like I painted for you. Why are you running to alcohol every now and then? Why are you so distracted? Ubnandi. Yini leyo. When the music has finished and you go home and you wake up with a hangover, yini leyo. Are you satisfied living that superficial life, nje, of distraction, of just being distracted? Yeah, miracle. Monday. So Sunday, you're nursing a hangover. Now you're thinking of that job that you got to go to and get ready for. No time for any inner work. So a lot of the generational trauma is within us, right? Because it's unhealed. If we don't heal, they don't heal. So it's in us. Add on top of that, our own traumas, we are traumatizing one another because of the narratives that are playing in our subconscious. We can never be okay as long as we are trying to live our lives based on the ground or the foundation that was laid by colonialists. Whether that be on a religious, economic, social, cultural, anything that was laid down as groundwork by colonialists, we as Bakwantu are misaligned. As Ngendao, that's why we cannot survive. That's why we are dysfunctional within this system. We are dysfunctional within this system. We can never be functional in this system because the system was created to keep us dysfunctional. That's why I said things have to be destroyed. Next month, July, is set Umbildisi. That's where we're going to see some amazing destruction, because Set only destroys those things that are not in Ma'at. We cannot, and I don't care what anyone says, we have history to prove it. Why are we as a nation still struggling? Bakwantu. It's a mental slavery thing, which results in our inability to connect with nature and to be deeply spiritual the way we are supposed to be. We are not humans like those other things that come after us. At our very core, we are spirit having a human experience. And when we are misaligned with that, we are messed up. It just shows in our communities, even in those who are affluent, the abuse is rife, the cheating is rife, the child abuse is rife, the drug abuse, the alcohol abuse, you name it, it's crazy with it. Yeah, because now they have the money, but they use the money to distract themselves more. So their distractions can become more sophisticated. But at baseline, the guy in Sandton with his millions is just as wounded as the guy in Soweto with his peanuts. And if you look across the board, if we were to say no, if you look at socioeconomic status, you see differences. There's nothing. Where are the differences? Show me major differences. Some are able to buy themselves out of their criminal activities that they do because they are in that higher socioeconomic status. The guy who stabs his wife, Ekas, is going to end up in jail doing time. The guy who stabs his wife in Sandton can go and buy a judge, can go and buy this. Already you see that this structure is toxic to us because the very people working and running this structure are so tainted and distorted. Ubuntu Babo doesn't exist anymore. Hence, we have what is happening now with this crazy election. So when I say we are all sick, we are. All of us. Sakula. This is Dingimbazo. We need that herb. For real. We're not okay. We're not okay psychically, emotionally, psychologically, psychospiritually, and therefore physically. We're not okay. All our spiritual ailments and distortion and disease is manifest in how our lives are right now as a collective. Those who are trying to do right live in fear of those who are cuckoo on the outside, crying. There's no ma'at. So what kind of a life is this? So you have your money, you drive your nice car, but you live in fear as you drive your car because you could be hijacked any minute. So you see how interconnected we are, whether we want to or not. Unless you go and live on the moon somewhere, but then there are people there on the moon. The Martians are there and they are waiting for you, and they don't want you with your distorted self. So where you gonna go? Where you go? Nowhere. You have to stay here with the rest of us and fix this. And it starts with you. It starts with you. I mean, I could go on and on about the social ills and whatnot, but who wants to come on? Do request if you would like to come on and share your thoughts, and we can talk that way. Otherwise, if nobody comes on, I'm going to go. But, and like I said, this is such a deep topic. Like, it's deep, it's broad, and we have so many examples of what I would call cultural toxicity or societal toxic norms, because what makes them toxic is that they're not ours. This is why you'll find somebody like me saying, feminism doesn't really work because it's not ours. And believe me, this is coming from a rah-rah, ladies burn your bra feminist. I come from the movement. I was in the movement ever since I could remember. But being in the movement was because I could see that there was something seriously wrong that was going on. So it became, and because feminism really is about an us and a them. Feminism does not seek to build any bridge or to cause any healing. And once I woke up to the fact that, wait a minute, this is also now starting to feel like those badly fitting shoes. It's not quite comfortable. And that and when I started to awaken to what religion had done to us, and then I'm watching, and I was in an all actually Guys, this thing is... Okay, sorry guys. So it was about to switch off because it was saying I've been here for too long and there's no activity. So it was going to switch off. But what I was saying is I come from very deep in the feminist movements. In fact, a lot of my comrades are still there. Many of you know who these comrades are. If you know any major feminists, if you know One in Nine, if you know V-Day, Eve Ensler, if you know, gosh, so many of these movements that I've worked with over the years. But it became very clear to me, especially when I had my awakening, the same way that religion became clear and politics became clear, that there was one common denominator in all these things. They didn't originate among us. They didn't originate on the continent. And so I started to look at how we as African women, for example, were interacting with this feminism. And I just was like, nah, man, this doesn't make sense. I'll give you an example. I remember meeting a sister. She was from Zimbabwe, very well educated. And for her, feminism meant that she could go around and sleep with any man she wanted. But at the same time, she was married. I had a problem with that. And she called it feminism. This is what it is to be free. And so as I watched how white women moved with this whole feminism thing and how our sisters were moving with this feminism thing, I was like, nah, man. This feminism thing to our sisters is almost like a retaliation. It is not a movement to try to bring balance or order or harmony, but it is a response to the violence that they were experiencing. And the response, though, was generating more violence. The response was creating a bigger divide between the masculine and the feminine. And yet I was watching the feminism in this all-white space that I occupy over here, mostly white. And I'm watching how these, the palm-colored ones are moving with their feminism. And I'm like, this is different because they are moving with it in order to get what they want. Here's an example. Within a home, white person's home, it is very rare that there are these strict gender roles. It is very rare that the husband doesn't know how to cook or help kids' homework or literally change diapers or it's very rare. And I've been here for a long time. I've been here for 23, 24 years. I've been observing all this. In a white household, if there's an agreement, and there usually is, this is the thing, that these people write things down. This is how they do their things. The woman will say, you want us to have a family? Good, then I'm going to stay home and be a homemaker. And this is how much you are going to pay me. Because they did a whole calculation out here as to what, in terms of a homemaker, if this person was to take just even the homemaking skills out and do it as a job, they'd earn a 6-figure salary here. Oh, so calculations are done, and every 2 weeks or every month, homemaker gets her change, which is hers to do whatever they like. And the first thing that happens is first the bills get paid, then what's left, then they pay one another. Right? Husband gets paid, wife gets paid. Some savings are already put away. They're very organized about this feminism. I was like, why is it working for them? Because it's theirs. Remember, they started fighting for things like the right to vote. They started fighting for the 50-50 that you all now took and wear 50-50, but at the same time you're crying and saying you want men to be a provider, but you're crying 50-50. Make it make sense. You see how confused we are? Why are we confused? Because it's not ours. It's not organic to us and our nature as Bagwantu. What keeps rising in us is the truth about who we are, which is that there was never this 50-50. Everybody knew their natural role, not their societally structured role of provider, of this, of head of household, of this, even the terminology didn't exist. If you're using this terminology, Ubaba wekhaya. Ubaba wekhaya means the father of the home. Umama wekhaya means the father of the home. There is no power differential in those statements. But the minute you say inhloko, the head of house, sulimele ke lapho, because siyazi ukuthi iphuma. That one comes from the Bible, straight. Do you see what I'm saying to you guys? What is rising in us and calling in us, which is causing these contradictions, is our innate or inbuilt nature rises in response to wanting to be in a certain way of relationship. But now we have these toxic cultural impositions and social impositions on us that play with our mind and tell us actually it should be this way. Because if you think about 50-50, but we're talking about Indlovukazi being God herself, where does 50-50 come into it in Ndlovukazi? You know your place. The divine masculine knew their place and they understood how to move in balance with one another, complementing, not competing with one another. But as we have adopted over centuries these toxic cultural traits, these toxic societal traits, and this sort of brainwashing that has happened to us, we have become more and more confused, more and more violent, more and more toxic towards one another. We now view one another as enemies. We always talk about the girl child needs to protect herself. Protect herself from who? Because the real predators who are after her are those who look like her father, her brother, her uncles. Isn't that painful? And it was never like that. So this system will continue to win if we don't wake up and start that decolonization process. The few of you that are here, 50 odd people, you're enough. If each one of you really took just this seriously, and when you're in an argument with your spouse, I stop this gender, this J, because really what we're doing is we're perpetuating that cycle, and we're othering one another instead of finding a way and understanding. That's why I wove that story, because I need you to move from the heart space. It's gonna have to be that thing. And I'm talking to both men and women. The problem we have faced is that women are doing the work and men are not. And that I will keep harping on, because that's the part where I get upset. It's very easy for men to criticize women, but they don't want to introspect to say, how did women get here? Women are doing the work. They understand how men got wounded, but they're tired of the excuses not to do the work. Women, when men cry, are the same ones who say, a man who cries, it's such a put off for me. A man who cries is a put off for you. I would take those tears in a gold bowl and drink them if I were you. That is a man who's showing you his vulnerability. That is a strong man, because he's swimming against a current that says men don't cry. Do you understand that if his friends knew that he was crying, they would laugh at him? Do you understand that at his job as CEO of a company, if his subordinates knew that he cried in front of his wife or his girlfriend, that his rankings or his status would come down? Are you understanding what's at stake when a man cries? And are you there to receive that gift of his tears? Because what that shows you is that that's a breakthrough. He's not being broken down, he's breaking through. He's getting in touch with his humanity, because a lot of men are dissociated from Ubuntu Babo. So if you as a woman are going to say you want to, you men must be nice, what's wrong with these men? But you're at the same time, at the other side of your mouth, you're the one who will look down disdainfully on a man who cries. Oh, many of you are so used to toxicity. A good man comes your way and you're like, he's dumb. You like the ones that go, hey, where are you? I've been calling you, you're not picking up your phone. You like those kind, right? You like those ones who ravage you. Yeah, there are women who like, if he doesn't hit me, he doesn't love me. Do you see how sick that is? So you're going to run away from relationships with healed men because you yourself are unhealed. You want that toxic behavior. You want that louche energy, that low vibrational energy is what you seem to function on. Hey, boo. So do you see how on both sides we could go at each other? Men can go at women, women can go at men, but my question remains, to what end? To what end? Because we have bigger fish to fry right now. We have a war that we are waging. And it's not us against us. If you think the war is men against women, you're sadly mistaken. We have an enemy that has existed on this planet that is no longer required on this planet, that this enemy has got to go. But you guys are assisting it to stay because you're busy. Men and women against each other. Brother against brother. Nigerians come here to ruin our country. The Zimbabweans are ruining our country. The Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe, also the Malawians are messing up. These ones, and the Beles are terrible people. The Shonas killed us in Gukurahundi. I'm not discounting those things, but what I'm saying is, in all of that, do you see who the real enemy is? Who funded Gukurahundi? Just because your brother was the one who held the gun, where did he get the gun? Where did he get the training to come and moor you? You got to start seeing things with a spiritual eye to understand, even as we hurt each other, because we are hurting each other, we will continue to hurt each other until we heal. But even as that is happening, have the spiritual sense to see who the real enemy is. That way we have hope that we're going to pull out of this. Somebody said we're truly distracted. You know, sometimes I have to pasha about a lot of things. One of the things I really wanted to do, and there is a group already where we do collective umpatlo, but I am trying to answer a call that I've had from uNomkhubulwane to bring together a group of Indlovukazi to teach them the ways of uNomkhubulwane, because we are needed. And on balance, it is going to be Indlovukazi who are going to vusa this thing. Why? Because at baseline, we are the ones who see, because we bear children, and many of us are worried about what the future holds for our kids. We are the ones who are preparing food. Many of us are cutting vegetables and wondering what poison that they've put there. We are the ones who are thinking about maybe we should get some sort of food security and start growing our own food. So invariably, and it's not to say that's a burden on us, but if you look throughout history, it has been Indlovukazi who have vusad into, and then the men come in and join. So I will keep you posted on what I am hearing and being called to do. But we need a circle. We need a tight circle. It doesn't have to be a big circle where we come together and really go deep on some of these things and do meditations together and do some spiritual work. We are very powerful. There are things that we can do to shift the status quo. But all I'm seeing right now as I look through in Ndlovukazi, I'm just seeing a whole bunch of egos. I'm seeing a whole bunch of narcissistic behavior, distraction. I have literally said to Uma, please identify them yourself, because now I can't. Because that kind of power in the wrong hands, we're in trouble. What I'm talking about needs uprightness. It needs the heart space to be pure. It needs love and compassion. Like I said, so that even as we're hurting each other, all you feel is compassion for us. Doesn't mean you don't get angry or upset, but deep at your core is you understand that this brokenness we're seeing around us comes from deep wounding. So, on that note, I hope I have left you some food for thought. This has been intense, right? Yo, hi Nick. It's been intense, but we are living in intense times. So, just to let you guys know, huge planetary shifts going on. I forget what date, I think it's the 5th of June. There's a whole bunch of planets that if you wake up early, just before dawn, and you look in the sky, you'll see all these planets in a straight line. I'll put a post up on Facebook or somewhere to show you. Really interesting times we're living in. It's a very rare occurrence to see all these planets in a straight line. In the night sky, you'll be able to see them. I think 5th of June, 5th of June, early morning. Go and take a look. I don't know how long that will last. Yeah. In Ndlovukazi are the real architects. We just come with manpower. Oh, there's somebody on here. Somebody asked to come on. Who is this? No request, guys. So I'll stay on for a little longer. Let's talk. You're welcome. It says Miss Lenzo. Oh, Goddess, thank you. I appreciate you. See if somebody comes on. If not, we'll call it a night. And I'll repost the whole thing on to, I don't think whoever was here is still here. So let's just leave it. All right, guys, I think I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. Sending you deep love. May we all heal, and may we all align with our purpose. We are all so very necessary. Good morning, Q Deep SA, Grand Rising King. Look like a king. I hope I'm saying the right thing. Yantando Gufa. I love you guys so much. And well, over the next few days, if I have moments where, if I get called, you'll see me. I'll come and say hi. But no, bongamin, okay. Thank you guys so much. Masithokozeni. Siyabonga.